Be'ezras Hashem Yisbarech, we are continuing with Perek Shlishi in the Rambam's Hilchos Talmud Torah, the third chapter in the Rambam's Laws of Torah Study, in his Sefer Madda, his Book of Knowledge. In today's Perek, we're going to discuss the human condition required for Torah learning. We spoke in the past about the proper order, what age to learn, how to teach it, etc. And today, we're going to speak about how to prepare your body to be in the best state in order to learn Torah and the effect that it has on a person. Halacha Aleph. The Rambam says, there were 3 crowns that were granted to Klal Yisrael, to the nation of Israel, Keser Torah, Keser Kuna, Keser Malchus, the crown, so to speak, of Torah, the crown of the priesthood, and the crown of the kingship. Keser Kahuna, the crown of the priesthood, Zacha by Aaron, the Aaron received it, he merited this crown. Shanamar, as the pasuk says, that they merited to have this covenant of priesthood forever for Aaron and his children. Keser Malchus, the crown of the kingship, Zacha by David, the house of David received the merit for this crown. Shanamar, as the pasuk says, Zarai la'olam yeh v'chisoi kashemesh negdi, that you should have this kingship forever, and you shall sit on the throne like the sun opposite me. Keser Torah harei munach v'oimed umuchan lakol. But Keser Torah, the third of the Ksarim, was there for everybody to accept. Shenamar, as the pasuk says, Torah tziva lanu Moshe moirasha kihilas Yaakov. That Torah was commanded to Moshe, and it was inherited for all of the Kehila of Yaakov, meaning Bnei Yisrael. And we spoke about this previously, to say that this was the first verse that you should teach your child, because the child needs to know that from a very young age. Him being born means that he was born into a covenant where he inherited this Torah. And this is the same verse. The Rambam continues, anybody who wants to learn it should come and take this Torah. A person might err and say, the other 2 Ksarim, the priesthood and the kingship, are bigger, are greater than the crown of Torah. And we know that that's false, because the pasuk says, "Bi malachim yimleichu," that the kings are going to rule. Ve roiznim yichkeku tzedek, and the princes are going to decree justice. Bi sarim yasuru, and the nobles are going to rule. What does that mean? This teaches us that the crown of Torah is greater than that of the priesthood and of the kingship. Why? Because these kings and princes and nobles, etc., they're ruling only on behalf of the laws and the rules stated within the Torah itself. And therefore, if they're using the Torah to lead their responsibilities, so it must be that the Torah itself is greater than the other 2 Ksarim. Halacha Beis, the Rambam continues speaking about the greatness of Torah. Amru Chachamim, our sages taught, Mamzer Talmud Chachamim Kaidem L'Kayin Gadol Ama'aret, that a mamzer, somebody who's born out of a illicit sexual relation, they are considered greater if they are a Talmud Chacham than a Kayin Gadol, the high priest, if he is an ignoramus. Shenamar, as the pasuk says, Yikara hi mipninim, that precious is it more than pearls, and the word pearls, pninim, shares the same root as pnimi, which we learn Yikara hi mikayin gadol shenichnas lifnai v'lifnim. And we could learn from here that what does it mean? That he's more precious than that person who goes lifnai v'lifnim, who goes into the most holy of holies, which is talking about the kayin gadol who goes into the holy of holies on Yom Kippur. And therefore, this person who's a mamzer but he's a Talmud Chacham, he is greater than even an Amaretz who goes lifnai v'lifnim. Halacha Gimel, ein lecha mitzvah b'chol ha-mitzvahs kulan shehi shekula keneged Talmud Torah. You don't have another mitzvah in all of the mitzvahs that's equal to the greatness of Talmud Torah. Ela Talmud Torah keneged kol ha-mitzvahs kulan. Rather, learning of Torah is equal to all of the other mitzvahs combined. Shat Talmud mevi lidei maisa, because learning brings you to action, like we stated before in the previous 2 chapters. Lefikach ha-Talmud kaidem l'maisa b'chol makom. Therefore, we say that learning comes before the deeds in all respects. You may be thinking back to Perek Aleph, Halacha Gimel, where we also brought this idea, and you might say that this sounds redundant, but I'll just clarify that over there in Perek Aleph, the Rambam was speaking about someone who had no Torah knowledge, and therefore the Rambam was instructing him, better go toil to learn something than just devote your entire life to doing deeds. And now the Rambam's speaking about Torah study as a whole. Even somebody who has a basis in Torah, he should still continue to learn, because that will bring him to do good deeds. Halacha Daled, the Rambam now speaks about the practical of that idea. Hayalafan of Asiyas mitzvah v'Salmud Torah. Let's say you have the option to continue studying Torah or to go do a mitzvah If that mitzvah could be accomplished by somebody else, then don't stop your learning. But if it can't be accomplished by anybody else, so then you have to stop, go do the mitzvah, and then continue your Torah learning. Halacha hey, the Rambam says, when you get up to Shemayim Achar Me'ah Ve'esrim after 120, the first thing they're going to judge you upon is your Torah study. And some like to point out that the Gemara says that the first question they're going to ask is, are you honest in business? So doesn't that contradict what the Rambam says here? So some have the answer that, well, yes, the first of the positive questions that they're going to ask you is, were you honest in business? The first thing that you're going to be rebuked in heaven for is your nullification of Torah study. And then they're going to ask you about all other deeds. And therefore our sages said, therefore our masters, our great sages taught us that a person should always toil in Torah, even if he's doing so for the wrong reasons. Let's say he's doing so for honor or because he thinks it's going to bring him for wealth, etc., etc. He should still learn that Torah, because doing it with the wrong intentions eventually will lead to doing it with the proper intentions. Some point out that the word toich, mitoich, means insides, and since in our insides we have a connection with godliness that is unbreakable and is completely pure, so therefore when we learn Torah, it connects directly to our toich, to our interior, to our spark of godliness, and therefore even if we think that we're doing so for the wrong reasons, for honor, etc., etc., but really it creates an unbreakable connection with that interior godly spark that we all have, and therefore it will eventually lead to a proper level of study. Halacha Vav, the Rambam now speaks about somebody who's able to attain these high levels. Somebody who's able to learn at this high level and be, so to speak, crowned with this crown of Torah. He shouldn't get distracted by doing other things. And he shouldn't think, oh, maybe I could still learn Torah and also become rich and be honored and famous, etc. Rather, the way of these type of Torah scholars is pas b'melach teichel. He should eat plain bread with salt. Va'ala aretz tishan, and he shall sleep on the ground. V'chayitzar tichya, and he should live a life of hardships physically. UveTorah tia amel, and what should be his pursuit? Learning Torah. V'loy alacha hamalacha ligmar, and don't think when you're studying Torah that you need to finish everything. We see in today's day and age that there's hundreds and hundreds of thousands of Sifrei Torah, hundreds and thousands of commentaries, etc. And it could be that if you think, oh, I'll never reach the point where I learn all of that, that's going to turn you away from learning in the first place. So it's saying, don't think you have to finish. But that being said, you are not free to nullify your learning at all times. You have to pursue. Even if you never reach that goal of finishing Kol HaTorah Kula, you have to work every single day of your life to try and get there. Aval, in hirbisa Torah, hirbisa sachar, the more that you learn and toil, the more reward that you get. V'hasachar lefi hatzar. And how do you get this reward? From the hardship. And therefore, a person who's at this state needs to work, pushing aside all the worldly desires and focusing on just learning Torah, even if it comes with physical hardships. Halacha Zayin, the Rambam addresses common mistakes a person may have when setting up his life for Torah learning. Shema Taimar, a person might say to himself, Ad sha'akabetz mamain ve'echsar ekra, I'm going to wait until I gather a lot of money and then I'll go back and I'll learn in Kailo. Or Ad sha'ekna masha ani tzarich ve'efona ma'aske ve'achzar ekra, or I'm going to work in my business until I get everything that I need and then I'll go back to learning Torah. If you have these thoughts in your heart, you think, yeah, this is the proper way of doing it. Work, and then I'll go do Torah when I'm retired. Then you're going to miss out on being one of these people that merits the crown of Torah forever. You can never get to that level. Rather, what should you do? You should learn Torah in a established manner, and your work should be done in a temporary measure. And don't say that I'll turn back to learning when I reach this level, because maybe you will never turn back to learning. Halacha Ches, that Rambam is now going to speak about certain things that are a roadblock for reaching this level of Torah study. About Torah, the pasuk says, "Loi b'shamayim," he should not be in the sky. V'loi me'ever layom hi, and it's not across the sea. What does that mean? Loi b'shamayim hi, it's not in the sky, means loi b'gasi haruach hi mitzuya, that Torah will never be able to be attained by people who are very prideful. Their heads are in the clouds, so to speak. V'loi me'ever layam hi, and nor is it across the sea. Loi b'mahalchei me'ever layam hi, that means it's not attainable for people that are constantly going across the sea, meaning people that are doing business, they're traveling all the time. Lefikach amru chacham, therefore our sages taught us, like kol hamarbe schira machkim, not all people that gain in their wages, meaning they become wealthy, are they necessarily going to become filled with chachma, meaning Torah knowledge. And that's why they commanded and said, you should conduct business in limited measures, and you should be Isaac in Torah. You should be completely involved in learning Torah. Halachatas, the Rambam speaks about Torah as a parable. Divrei Torah nimshulu b'mayim. Torah is associated with the metaphor of water. Shenamar, as the pasuk says, "Hey kol tzamei l'chu l'mayim." Anybody who's thirsty, come and drink from the water. Loimer l'cha, which means to tell us, Ma hamayim ein miskansin b'makim midorain ella nischolin mei olav umiskabsin b'makim eshboiran. Just like water doesn't gather in a high place, but rather it flows from the high place to the low place and gathers there. So too, Torah doesn't remain with these people who are very high on themselves and very prideful. Only it remains with somebody who looks at himself as a lowly, small creature. Because they basked in the dust of the wise people's feet. And they got rid of these desires and worldly pleasures from their heart. And the only time that they work is to attain a wage in order to survive if they can't eat or something like that, etc. But all the rest of their days and nights are committed to learning Torah. Halacha Yud, the Rambam is now going to speak, even though we said that a person who learns Torah needs to be disconnected from physicality, don't think that means that you shouldn't work at all. Anybody who thinks, you know what, I don't need so much, I'll commit all my days to learning Torah and I'll just be supported by people's charity. This is a desecration of God's name. And it's a disgrace to the Torah. And it extinguishes the flame of knowledge. And it brings a lot of bad upon the person. And it takes a person's life portion away from the next world. Because it is completely forbidden to gain from the Torah learning. And we spoke about this in the previous chapter, about how the Rambam is very against people gaining physical pleasure from the Torah, whether that be through money, etc. And we mentioned over there that there are people that strongly disagree with the Rambam, and so too here, many of the commentaries strongly disagree with the Rambam, but the Rambam holds steady, and he's going to continue describing our early sages that followed this pattern of working a little bit and learning a lot. Amru Chachamim, our sages said, Kol Hanana Midivrei Seira, anybody who gains from learning of Torah, not al chayav min ha'olam, they remove their portion from this world. V'ayid tzivu v'amru, and they also commanded and said, Lai ta'asem atara li's gadol behem v'lai kardaim lachbor behem. You shouldn't make Torah into a crown for you to be raised up upon, or turn it into an axe, so to speak, to chop for it, meaning don't use Torah to increase your pride, or don't use Torah as a axe to chop wood, meaning as your parnasa. Ve'oid tzivu va'amru, and they also said, oyev es hamalacha usene es harabanos, that you should love working, meaning livelihood, and you shall hate being a rabbi. V'chol Torah she'ein ima malacha seifa b'teila, any Torah learning that doesn't come with straining for a livelihood, in the end is going to be Torah learning that's nullified. V'seif adam zeh shehem las teis es habriyos, and this person is going to end up being somebody who, so to speak, steals from the other people around him. As we see, the Rambam is very strong in this sentiment. It's a great level for somebody who supports himself through his own hard work. And this was the pious ways of our early teachers. Like we described previously, some were wood choppers and water carriers, etc. And following this way, you're going to get all of the goodness of this world and the next. Shenamar, as the pasuk says, Yagia kapecha ki seichel ashrecha v'teiv lach, that somebody who eats through his hands' work will be happy and good for him. Ashrecha, what does it mean? Will be good. Ba'olam hazeh, that's talking about in this world. V'teiv lach, and will be good for you. La'olam haba, that's in the future world. Shekula teiv, that everything will be good. Halacha Yud Beis, ein divrei Torah miskayim b'mi. Shemirape atzmai alehan. Torah will not remain with somebody who doesn't toil in his learning. And it won't remain with somebody who thinks that he could gain from the pleasure of eating and drinking, etc., together with learning Torah. Rather, it only remains with somebody who, so to speak, kills himself to learn Torah and causes a lot of pain to his physical body. If he doesn't sleep, tenuma, and his eyelids become slumber. Our teachers taught us in a way of hinting. This is the Torah when a person dies in his tent. What does that mean? It means that the Torah is only going to remain with somebody who, so to speak, kills himself in the tent of knowledge, meaning in the base medrash. He toils to a level where his physical body is crushed, and that's going to cause his Torah to remain with him. And so too, King Solomon said in his wisdom, that if you don't toil during the day, your knowledge is going to be small. And he also said, Af chachmasi amda li, that my knowledge remained with me. Chachma shalamati ba'af, was that talking about the knowledge that I learned, so to speak, in my anger? Amda li, that stayed with me, meaning the Torah knowledge that I learned that was contrary to the physical human reality and comfort level, that's what stayed with me. Amru chachamim, the sages said, Bris kirusa shekol hayageya b'toirasai bebeis hakneses, that there is an eternal covenant with somebody who learns Torah in a study hall, loy b'mehera, who mishakeach, he's not going to forget this Torah quickly, v'chol hayageya b'salmudai b'tzina, and anybody who in their free time learns Torah privately, Machim, he also gains in his knowledge. Shenamar, as the pasuk says, "Ve'es tzenuim chachma," that those who are private gain in their knowledge. V'chol hamash mia kailoi b'shas talmudai, and anybody who speaks their Torah learning in a loud voice, talmudai miskayim biyadai, he's going to retain all of his Torah learning because it involves all of his limbs of his body. When he learns out loud, he's speaking, he's chuckling, etc. But somebody who reads quietly, he's going to forget his Torah knowledge quickly. And it's important to point out the difference between how one studies secular knowledge and how somebody studies Torah. People study secular knowledge in a library, very quiet, no voice at all. Whereas people learn Torah in a loud-based medrash with a roaring kol Torah, and yet we see that that's the way to retain your Torah knowledge. Halacha Yigimel, the Rambam speaks about the best time to learn Torah, even though we have a commandment to learn both day and night. Ein Adam Lamed Reiv Chachmasei Ela B'Layla. A person doesn't learn most of his Torah knowledge except for at night. Lefikach Mi Sheratza Liskais B'Keseret Torah. Therefore, people who want to gain this crown of Torah, Yizayer B'Chol Leilosav, they should be very careful with what they do at night. The Loya Abed Afilu Achas Mehen B'Sheina V'Achila Ushasiya V'Sicha V'Chiyetz Behen, and they shouldn't waste it even 1 minute on eating and drinking and speaking, etc. Ela B'Salmud Torah Uv'Divrei Chachma. Rather, they should spend all their nights learning and putting it towards things of knowledge. Amru Chacham, our teachers taught us in Grana Shal Torah El Laila. There's no song of Torah except at night. And as the pasuk says, Kumi Reini Balayla, arise and sing at night. Anybody who spends their nights learning Torah, Chut Shal Chesed Nimshach Allah Bayoim, he will gain a special kindness from God in the day. Shanamar, as the pasuk says, Yemam Yitzav Hashem Chazdei Uvalayla Shira Imatfila Lakel Chai, that your kindness will extend to the days, and at nights you will sing the song with Hashem your God. V'chol bayis she'en divrei Torah nishma'in by balayla, eish oichaltoi, any house that doesn't have this song of Torah, so to speak, heard at night, fire will come and consume the house. Ki devar Hashem baza, because you are scorning the words of God. Zeshaloi hishkiach al divrei Torah kol ikar. These are the people that don't give any attention to Torah at all. And somebody who has the ability to learn Torah and he doesn't, he's able to learn and he learns and he turns away eventually to the worldly desires and the pleasures of the world. This is contained in those people who scorn the words of God. Sages taught us, anybody who nullifies the Torah when he's rich, he doesn't learn it when he's rich. He's gonna end up wasting his time because he's poor, meaning he's gonna have to go and scurry around for food. And anybody who's able to learn Torah when he's poor, eventually he's gonna be able to fulfill it when he's rich because he's gonna get rich. And this idea is explicit in the Torah, because the pasuk says, "Tachas asher loy avada es Hashem elekecha b'simcha," due to the fact that you don't serve God when happy. Uvetuv levav meiroiv kol, and good feelings when you had an abundance of everything. Therefore, ve'avato es oivecho asher yishalchen Hashem bach bera'av uvetzama uve'eroim uvechaiser kol v'nasan al barzel. You're going to serve your enemies when he sends you famine and thirst and destitution, and you lack everything, and he's going to give you this yoke of iron. Va'imar, and it also says leman anoischa uleman nasoisecha. That if you go through these sufferings, which we have been speaking about in the whole last chapter, so you're going to suffer, and eventually it's going to lead to ultimately make you prosper.